The following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the Tiafangi coming to you with what will hopefully be a successful review. And today we're going to be taking a look at one of the more sought after exclusives of the Transformers Legacy Evolution line. And it is the Transformers Legacy Evolution War Dawn 2-pack, which contains deluxe figures of two Transformers characters who, to my knowledge, have never been given Transformers figures that have been released at mass retail. I know that one of them was given a figure that was released at BotCon, the official Transformers convention, but the other figure, I can't remember if she got in a BotCon exclusive or if that was Elita 1. But anyways, the Transformers War Dawn 2-pack is a follow-up to the Transformers A Hero Was Born 2-pack released in Legacy Year 1, and the two characters available in this box set are Arial and Dion. Arial is the young version of Elita 1, who was the girlfriend of the young version of Optimus Prime, Orion Pax, who makes an Easter egg appearance on the box art here in the background. And so that's just a little nod to let everyone know that this 2-pack, along with the Hero Was Born 2-pack, are meant to represent the characters that appeared in the Transformers G1 cartoon episode, where we find out Optimus Prime's origin. And this 2-pack is appropriately named after that episode of Generation 1, War Dawn. And I'm going to just say this right now, revealing my face from behind the box. War Dawn is my all-time absolute favorite Transformers Generation 1 cartoon episode. I loved the origin story for Optimus Prime starting off as an Autobot named Orion Pax. I loved the time travel paradox where 9 million years in the past, the Arial bots helped Alpha Trion rebuild Orion Pax into Optimus Prime, and then 9 million years later, in an earlier episode of the G1 cartoon titled The Key to Vector Sigma Parts 1 and 2, Optimus Prime and the Autobots created the Arial bots in the Earth year 1985. So I just love that 9 million year time loop where it's basically almost like the metaphor or the question of which came first, the chicken or the egg. It's a egg. You ask yourself, you literally end up asking yourself, who came first, Optimus Prime and the or was it the Arial bots who were created first? Because for the Optimus Prime to have been created first, someone had to have built the Arial bots to allow them to time travel to the 9 million years into the past. But then if you say, if the Arial bots were created first, then who rescued Orion Pax and took him to Alpha Trion and had him rebuilt into Optimus Prime? So yeah, I've always loved that time paradox. Who created who first, Optimus Prime or the Arial bots? So bringing focus on the two characters here. Originally in the early version of the episode War Dawn, both Arial and Dion were supposed to die at Megatron's hands, and the trauma of seeing both his girlfriend and his best friend and murdered by Megatron, that would be the inspiration for Optimus Prime to lead the Autobots into battle against the Decepticons, because Optimus Prime didn't want anyone else to feel the pain he suffered the day Megatron took out Arial and Dion. But then the production staff working on the episode War Dawn, they were told about another earlier episode out for the cartoon titled The Search for Alpha Trion, which showed Optimus Prime's girlfriend Elita 1. And so a line of dialogue was slipped into the last scene with Alpha Trion in the episode, where Alpha Trion mentions, after the Arial bots tell him about Arial, that he mentions a female Autobot. I think I will call her Elita 1. So yeah, Elita 1 is Arial when she's been rebuilt by Alpha Trion, and which only leaves Dion's fate unknown. And over the years, Hasbro has gone to different conclusions as to what happened to Dion in a Facebook page titled Ask Vector Prime, in which Transformers fans asked Vector Prime trivia questions about the Transformers. Dion originally died and wasn't rebuilt into any other Autobot, and he stayed dead, and so the trauma of Dion, his best friend, dying made both Optimus Prime and Elita 1 make sure that no one else had to die at Megatron's hands, which unfortunately didn't always end up happening. But then IDW Comic Books, who wanted to make sure that Dion survived, well, kind of, sort of, came up with a story where Dion, along with another Autobot named Autobot Magnum, who looked a lot like Ultra Magnus, were both injured in battle, and when they were taken to Alpha Trion informed Optimus Prime he only had enough parts to save one of them, not both. oath, and so Alpha Trion, and so Optimus Prime told Alpha Trion, "I leave it up to you, you my, you Alpha Trion, to decide who has to be saved." And so Alpha Trion went in, and then when Alpha Trion came back, Ultra Magnus was there with him. So it didn't. So the question became not necessarily what happened to Dion. It became a question of which Autobot was upgraded into Ultra Magnus. Was it Dion or was it Autobot Magnum? So IDW left Transformers fans guessing whether or not if Dion is Ultra Magnus when he's a young Transformer. Before that story was published by IDW, there was speculation amongst some Transformers fans and collectors as to maybe if Dion might have been Ironhide when he was a young robot, because in a season 1 episode of the G1 cartoon, Optimus Prime calls Ironhide old friend, and in the episode War Dawn, Optimus Prime says that Dion is his best friend, and Dion's name is just a one-letter difference from the first half of Ironhide's name. So it's up to you guys to imagine whether or not you think Dion was rebuilt into Ultra Magnus, or if he was rebuilt into Ironhide, or if he stayed dead when Megatron blasted him. And I personally have grown to like the theory that Dion was Ultra Magnus when he was a young Autobot, because it makes perfect sense, because just like Optimus Prime transforming into a Cybertronian pickup truck for his alt mode, Dion having the same thing, a Cybertronian pickup truck, it would make sense for them both to eventually upgrade into semi-trucks. So yeah, I personally like the idea that it wasn't Magnum, it was in fact Dion who was rebuilt into Ultra Magnus, since he and Optimus Prime have been fighting each other besides each other for millennia, and they're the oldest and bestest of friends. But yes, again, it's again, because IDW didn't concretely say that Dion was rebuilt into Ultra Magnus, it could have been Magnum. It's all your choice. Always to decide what Dion's fate was. I personally choose to take the idea that Dion became Ultra Magnus. So first, I'm going to run around 360 on the box. You got the Legacy Evolution logo up here, and then you've got Megatron, Soundwave, and Shockwave flying over the skies of Cybertron, which they were shown doing before Megatron swooped down and introduced himself to Orion Pax and the other Autobots before blasting them. On this side of the box, you've got a close-up of Dion's face looking up at the Decepticons. You've got Arial over here looking up at the Decepticons. And one thing to note is that Ariel's name was originally spelled with a letter A at the start of her name. But here for the Legacy line, Hasbro couldn't trademark that name, since Ariel is one could argue is a human name, so they switched the first letter A in her name to the letter E, but you get the idea. Yeah, and then coming on here to the back of the box, you've got the new figures of them themselves. You've got Ariel and Dion in their robot modes and in their alt modes. Oh, it's Ariel transforms back and forth from her robot mode to her alt mode of a Cybertronian motorcycle in just 19 steps, and then Dion transforms back and forth from his robot mode to his vehicle mode of a Cybertronian transport pickup truck in just 20 steps. And yes, both of these are repaints and retools. They are not new molds. Dion is mold mates with the figure that was originally used for Studio Series 86 Cup, and Ariel is a repaint and retool of the mold that was originally used to make the Transformers Prime version of Arcee, which I personally use as Solus Prime. And yes, for being repaints and retools, I think they came out looking pretty great. So without further delay, let's get these guys out of the box and take a close look at them in their robot modes. Alright, and so here are Ariel and Dion out of their box, and I am really thrilled with how these two figures came out. I don't care that Ariel uses the Prime Arcee Legacy mold, which has gotten a lot of criticism. I think it's a appropriate mold for Ariel, considering the fact that Elita 1 has a Cybertronian car for her alt mode. I just love that theme that Hasbro and Takara Tomy went for when Transformers characters are rebuilt. They transform into a larger sized vehicle than the one they previously had with their older bodies, like Optimus Prime going from a Cybertronian pickup truck is what I was trying to say, into a 18-wheeler semi-truck. Same thing with Elita 1 going from a motorcycle to a Cybertronian car. Or I just love that they transform into larger vehicles that have even more wheels than the previous ones. One nice thing about Dion is that here on the back of his head, he has light piping, which is a feature that hasn't been seen for a while with Transformers Legacy figures, so I'm glad they were able to do that with him. I don't know if the light piping is going to work here on my camera right now, but his eyes, the light piping on his eyes is dark blue, so that's really, really nice to see that there. I love that they were able to give Ariel the ponytail that she had on the back of her head in the episode War Dawn, making it look like she has hair. I really like that. I also like the shade of pink that they used on her. I mean, granted, it's not entirely accurate, but for what it's trying to be, I think the designers at Hasbro and Takara did a pretty great job. The Prime Arcee mold has been used 5 times now, and Ariel's the one that's had the most retooled parts to her because the entire front of her motorcycle alt mode has been retooled, so she doesn't have the same dual blade pizza cutter weapons that every other version of the mold has come in, which I actually think helps her out. And then Dion, the only retooled part between him and the other versions of the mold that was used on Studio Series Cup is that he had, in addition to his new head, he has a new head sculpt. I think his pelvis might be the same as Orion Pax, but I could be wrong. And of course, he has these two new parts here that form his backpack. They become the elevated panels of his alt mode when he's in truck mode. And I'm just and even though I'm thrilled to finally have figures of both these characters because these are now the first and only figures of these two characters in my collection, I'm just really thrilled to finally have a figure of but now that I look at both of them, I'm thrilled to also have a figure of Ariel, the young version of Elita 1 as well. One thing to note about Dion is that even more so than Orion Pax and Cup, his arms, and legs do attach with very little effort. So, if you want, even though he wasn't shown losing his limbs like Cup does in the G1 film, you can give Dion the Ion a dying scene where all of his limbs have fallen off. So I can understand why they did that, but I honestly think that they could have done away with the gimmick here for Dion at least. I won't go into articulation too much because I've already looked at it with the Prime Arcee and Cup up reviews. And speaking of which, for some size comparisons, here they are next to the original versions of the molds. Here is Ariel next to Prime Arcee, which of course I use as my G1 Solus Prime figure, and here is Dion next to Cup. I kind of wish instead of using this fuel canister, this Energon fuel canister, they would have done on a different weapon for Dion here. Because it's not my favorite accessory piece. It might be one of my least favorite accessory pieces from a Legacy mold. And for one more special size comparison, here is Ariel next to the figure of the character she upgrades into. Here she is next to Elita 1. And even though they have different shades of pink from each other, I really enjoy seeing these two standing beside each other. I think it's great seeing Ariel, Elita 1 when she was young, and then when she's been rebuilt by Alpha Trion after the attack from Megatron that severely injured her. I didn't bring out Ultra Magnus or Ironhide for another size comparison with Dion because again, and it's been ambiguous Dion's fate if he died or if he was built into another Autobot. But yeah, I'm really thrilled with how they look in robot mode. So let's get them transformed into their alt modes and we will wrap up the review. Alright, and so here Arial and Dion transformed into their alt modes. Dion, of course, transforms into a carrier pickup truck with his new backpack parts forming the side panel sections that were seen in the G1 cartoon. I really like the inclusion of these new parts, even though it's not entirely cartoon accurate, considering the fact that the designers decided to make Dion a retool of Studio Series Cup up instead of a new mold. I think it came out looking great. I love how the canopy is at least cartoon accurate, and the extra pegs on one of the panels allows you to store the Energon fuel cup up here on the inside so it's not dangling off the side. Alright, so that's really nice thing to see there. I kind of wish this retool part in the back would have had a 5mm peg to put the laser gun in, but that's just a minor nitpick that I have with the mold. One thing to note about Dion is that unfortunately, unlike Cup and Orion Pax, his arms don't stay held in place properly when you transform him into his alt mode. At least on my copy of Dion, that's the case. So leaving the arms slightly unpegged and extended out helps the all the panel sections on his alt mode to stay in place. He rolls fairly well for the L as far as well, at least as the mold goes. There's very little clearance space between the knee pads and the back wheels. So this thing can't go off-roading at any time, but it does feel like it rolls better than Cup does, at least. And here's a close-up of Arial, and this is the what I meant by her having more retool parts out of all 5 versions of the mold. Oh, she has a new front section for her motorcycle mode. It's kind of hard for my camera to pick it up in the sunlight shining through my window, but if I hold it close up, you can kind of see it right there. She's got a light blue windshield there, which is solid paint. I like that they didn't make it clear plastic just for the sake of the windshield being clear like they did with the other 4 versions of the mold. Oh, the side panels, I believe, are new sculpting as well. Let me see here. Yeah, they are. But everything else about her is pretty much the same, apart from her head and her the front section of her motorcycle mode. Everything else about her is the same as Arcee. She does come with a laser gun. I don't know if this is reused from a previous mold. I think it might be brand new. Ooh, just like Ion's side panels on the backpack panels. But yeah, it's a nice thing there. And on the instructions and the photo on the back of the box, it shows those that you just plug the laser gun onto either side of the back of her alt mode, and it becomes another exhaust pipe apart from the one that's already sculpted on. And so, um, at least she does have that distinction of the new sculpted parts. And for some quick size comparisons, of course, here once again are the mold mates for Arial and Dion, the original versions. We got Prime Arcee, aka Solus Prime, and Studio Series 86 Cup. So yeah, Arial and Dion are pretty nice looking deluxe class Transformers figures. And of course, for another special size comparison, here's Arial next to Legacy Elita 1 here in the back. Actually, yeah, really great looking set of Transformers figures. So for the proverbial question of the review, do I recommend getting the War Dawn 2-pack of the Legacy Evolution Dion and Arial figures? Absolutely, I do. You cannot go wrong having these figures in your Transformers collection, even if you do have the other figures that they're mold mates with. If the newly sculpted parts are enough of a distinction between them and their mold mates that you can at least tell that they are trying to be distinguished Transformers characters in both robot mode and alt mode. And again, and as far as I'm aware of, even though these two last year in 2023, the War Dawn 2-pack of Dion and Arial were the Hascon exclusive Transformers figures, just like Alpha Trion and Orion Pax in the Hero Was Born 2-pack were the Hascon exclusive figures for Legacy Year 1. And despite not being released at mass retail, as far as past versions of the figures of these two Transformers characters, what I'm trying to say, even though they are still exclusives, they're easier to obtain than past figures have been. And whether or not we're going to get figures of Dion and Arial released at mass retail is uncertain. But I'm glad that Hasbro and Tomy decided to make these two figures to accompany the A Hero Is Born 2-pack with Orion Pax and Alpha Trion, just to have all the characters that appeared in the episode War Dawn. So, for me personally, this is one of my favorite exclusives of the Legacy Evolution line. And so I cannot stress enough how much of a necessity it is to have these two figures in your Transformers collection. And even if you don't agree that Dion is a young version of Ultra Magnus, he's still a nice figure to have from Optimus Prime's past. And because Dion's fate has never been made clear by Hasbro, you can even imagine that Dion was eventually repaired by Alpha Trion, and unlike Optimus Prime and Elita 1, who were given new names and new bodies, you could imagine that Dion simply just had his body restored and he never went through a name change, and so he's always been around. And thank you guys all so much. This has been the TFN Geek, and this has been my review of the Transformers Legacy Evolution War Dawn 2-pack. I highly recommend you get this set. it if you can. And in my opinion, Arial and Dion are must-have Transformers figures. So until next time, you guys stay safe, stay healthy, transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.